Hi everyone, hope you guys are good, hope you guys are amazing. Welcome back to another episode of Psychology Pathways with Sweetling. And as you can see today, I am not alone. I am with one of my lovely cohort members, my colleague, my classmate, and I'm going to introduce her. She's going to introduce herself and then we will get started. So if you are interested in this kind of content where we share all things registered counseling, all things BPsych Equivalent / Postgraduate Diploma in Psychological Counselling, then please stay tuned. Let's get started. Welcome to Psychology Pathways with Sweetling, where we guide future registered counselors one pathway at a time. My name is Thumeka and I am so glad that you're here. Let's begin. Hi, Thumeka.
Hi, Sita. How are you?
Good, thanks. And how are you?
I'm good, thank you.
Welcome to Psychology Pathways with Sweetling. How are you feeling?
Because I'm doing the BPsych and currently completing my practicum, I'm exhausted, obviously.
Sure, I can imagine. I think everyone is just really feeling it these last couple of months. Welcome. So we're going to have the interview, and I'm gonna ask you some questions. But before we go into the deep diving into the questions, the first question I normally ask my guests is I ask them to introduce themselves. Tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're from, what your journey has looked like up until this point, into getting into this qualification. We just want to get to know who Thumeka is, so you can go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hi everyone, my name is Thumeka Mkhanya. I am from KZN. I'm a BPsych student. I recently relocated to Pretoria because of the BPsych program. Honestly, I never considered the BPsych program because I didn't know anything about it. I only saw the name of the program because I had been with SACAP. So I've been studying at SACAP since 2020. So I would randomly see this program and I was like, nah, I don't think I want to do, because I didn't understand what a BPsych was. In my mind, I thought it's going to be undergrad, honors, and my master's. So when I was doing my will back in KZN, my site supervisor is a registered counsellor. So we spoke about it, about my future plans. And that's when she explained what a BPsych was and what a registered counsellor was. Because in my mind, I thought I want to be a psychologist. Mm-hmm. So when she explained what a registered counsellor was, I thought about it and I applied, went through the process, and voila, registered counsellor in the making.
Sure. Thank you so much for sharing your journey with us. Would you say the journey to getting here was simple for you?
For me, it was. Obviously, I had to put in the work. I had to do some research. I had to also speak to some of the previous cohort students that attended at SACAP, because I also just wanted to get clarity as to what I was putting myself into. It was my first time applying from undergrad and applying for the BPsych. I honestly didn't think I'd make it. Obviously, at the back of my mind, you know how faith is. Yes. I knew it was, because I had already spoken to my manager at work, telling her that I'd be resigning soon. So I applied. First time I got called. I made it through the next phase, and I got into the BPsych program.
Sure. Thank you so much for sharing that, Thumeka. I'm just curious to find out, obviously you were doing other work before you got into the field of psychology, or even through this route. Would you mind sharing what you were doing before and what made you think, wow, I actually want to go into psychology and actually delve deep into this profession now?
So I was previously working as a learner support agent, as a psychosocial support worker at a high school back in KZN. And I think that's where my love for psychology actually grew, and my love for working with adolescents. Because initially, I didn't, well, okay, let me take you back. So back in high school, I studied accounting.
Okay.
And obviously, I was going to do financial management or bookkeeping. I did that, but I had to drop out because I realized that I wasn't in love with accounting. And then I had to find myself again. I did counseling, and that's how I ended up working at that high school as a psychosocial support worker. I worked there for 10 years before I left. Yeah, before I left my job. You know how it is when you're chasing the dream, because I wasn't registered with HPCSA. So I was very limited at what I was doing at work. That's why I decided, to take the risk and come to Pretoria to pursue my dreams of becoming a registered counselor. So that's where my love grew, actually. And when my site supervisor spoke, because she didn't convince me, honestly. I think it was just an educational moment where she explained what a registered counselor was, and the fact that I found my love at a school environment working specifically with adolescents. I was like, oh, okay, I can still work with adolescents, even as a registered counselor, because I initially thought from undergrad I'd have to do my academic honors and then maybe educational psychology because I was exposed in that environment. But when she explained what a registered counselor, I was like, oh, okay, I am going to go back to my kids. Obviously, it doesn't have to be the same kids, but just going back into a school environment. That's how I ended up here.
Sure, that has been a long journey. And I mean, I think being here right now probably feels so fulfilling for you because, like you're mentioning, you've always wanted to work with kids. That's the environment you want to work in. And even after this, I'm guessing you want to go back into that environment, go back to working with kids. So were you considering doing educational psychology if you had gone through the academic honors route?
Yeah, if I had gone through that route, I was deciding between clinical and educational psychology. But I think because, when you start the psychology route, the idea is always clinical psychology because it sounds so, it's always clinical psychology. So I thought I want to do clinical psychology. So when I worked with the kids, that's when I was like, oh, okay, I think actually I could do educational psychology because they work with children, right? Yeah. So I thought I'd go that route, but now things have changed. As a result, I haven't applied for my master's because I'm like, I don't mind working as a registered counselor because it's something I love. It's something I actually fell in love with. Yeah.
Sure. That's a beautiful story. And I think even a lot of other students who've gotten into this program, I think some of them had used it maybe as like a backup plan or a stepping stone. It's like, okay, I know it's very difficult getting into masters. Why don't I just, in the meantime, apply for the BPsych Equivalent Programme, see if I can get in. And if I can get in, at least I can practice, and register with the HPCSA and work. And then in the meantime, while doing that, then maybe I can still apply for masters, and I think I've met quite a few people who are hoping to do that. And I was actually, at some point, I was one of those people that wanted to do that. And as I fully indulge myself in this specific field or in this specific discipline, I realized that no, actually, I'm meant for registered counselling and not any of the other psychological professions. This is where I was actually meant to be. So do you feel the same way, that this is actually where you were meant to be and not necessarily in a master's professional program?
To be honest with you, I also felt the same. When the idea grew of me applying for the BPsych program, at first, to be honest, it was, obviously a shortcut, because for me, the biggest issue was leaving my job. Now, you can imagine working for 10 years. I've got a 10-year-old, by the way, who's in high school. So I had to think of her, because I was like, if I leave my job, what's going to happen with her? Because she's in high school. Sooner, she'll be doing grade 12. Where would I be? What are the chances that after completing my BPsych, I'll be able to find a job? So I was caught in between all those thoughts. And when I had decided, I was like, okay, you know what? Let me just follow, because psychology actually told me something. I'm an overthinker, I love being in safe spaces. So it actually taught me to, spread my wings and fly and taking those risks, right? So initially I thought, this is just a backup plan. I want to get a job as soon as I'm done. And then, but now, as a result, I think I was thinking about this just yesterday. I was like, what actually happens if I want to continue working as a registered counselor, but with a master's degree? Because I don't think I'm ready to, to practice as a psychologist, but I would love to practice as a registered counselor, maybe for the next, 10 years. And then maybe after I can think about, practicing as a psychologist. Yeah.
Sure, that's so beautiful. And I think, to add on to that, the one thing my practicum supervisor told me the one time when I was considering, when I was still thinking about, do I still want to go into masters, or am I going to be completely happy with registered counseling? And I love the scope of a registered counselor. I've fallen in love with it more now. I don't see myself doing anything else. That doesn't mean I don't want to further my studies. And when we were having the conversation, she realized that me wanting to do masters wasn't particularly because I wanted to become a clinical psychologist. Yes, I did want to. I would have loved to work with pathology, work in the hospital setting, and all of that. But my desire for that was not enough to say that I want to actually go and fight for this. And I actually realized in the conversation that actually I think I'm just somebody who would love to further my studies. And she was like, and that's exactly what you can do with registered counseling. It doesn't mean now that you've gotten your NQF level 8, you stop at that. You can still continue and go and acquire a master's qualification. Even in the field of psychology, it doesn't have to be a professional master's qualification. It can always be a qualification in whatever. Maybe as you start to work as a registered counselor, you may realize that you have a passion in a certain area of research, and then you may decide that you actually want to go do a master's in research that's going to help you research that particular area or topic and all of that. So that's when I realized that actually I'm not actually looking for the registration when I go into masters. I'm actually looking for just further education, but I'm happy being a registered counselor who is even maybe in future a master's holder or even a PhD holder one day, and still being a registered counselor.
Yeah. I mean, we all want to further studies, and I think the big goal is PhD. We all want to wear the red gown, right? And for me, what you're actually saying, because I think since I started studying at Psychological Counselling, which was 2020, I've been studying since. And as a result, because I didn't apply for my master's, I've been thinking about this quite a lot, especially because we are towards the end of our practicum. Yes. And sometimes I stress because I think, what am I going to be doing next year? Because now the goal is to get a job, right? Yes. But another thing is, okay, I'll get a job, but then what? because
Yes.
when I switched from working and studying to being a student full time, it was a struggle for me. I had to adjust in a lot of things, adjusting to being away from my family. I wasn't going to see my daughter as often as I did. Being away from everyone, going into a city, I know no one there. I don't know what's going to happen. I left my job and so the adjustment process for me, it was quite hectic. Emotionally, it was draining. It was heavy. But eventually, I adjusted to just being a student. So now the stress is, what am I going to do without, studying? And I think for me, I could say maybe studying for me is also just a coping mechanism because it keeps me distracted. And I think that's why I've always had it in my mind that I'm going to study. Like I'll study until, right? Which is after my BPsych, I'll do my master's, and after that, it's PhD. But now, like you just said, it's not just about furthering into master's and PhD. I could also, do small courses, attend workshops, and just to improve myself as a professional. Because when I did my BPsych, I was challenged because working as a psychosocial support worker, we are not registered with any board. So everything I did there was just responsibilities from the Department of Education because it was a new program. So when I started working as a psychosocial support worker, the program, I think it had been implemented. I think it was when I started, it was actually the second year. So everything
This is after your undergrad.
No. Yeah. Back in 2024.
Okay.
So, yeah. So everything was just new. Like we had to implement a lot of things, Not to say we weren't, there wasn't rules and stuff, but we had to do everything. Sometimes we had to figure out how to network because there was nothing in the book that said, these are the steps, this is what you do, this is what you don't do, even in terms of counseling. Because I think I had fallen in love with counseling, I read a lot. And being a SACEP student, obviously with introduction to psychology, I took all of that in and I applied it at my job. So it was a matter of practicing, not what I did practically, but out of theory, and I put it to work, right? So, but still, I didn't have a supervisor. I didn't know whether I was in the right track or not in terms of how I conducted the sessions, the referrals, and all of that. So when I started the BPsych program, it was quite challenging because I had to constantly remind myself that I'm no longer wearing that hat. I'm now a student registered counselor. So I think I would love to grow in this field, obviously by attending workshops and just growing in it until maybe I can, maybe in 2 years, I don't know, 3, then I can start thinking about applying for my master's.
Okay. Thank you so much for sharing that, Thumeka. And I think the one opportunity that we actually do have to continuously further, maybe not even necessarily furthering our studies, but to constantly be studying, is that with this qualification, once we register as registered counselors, we will have to do courses, attend workshops, and all of those things to be able to get our CPD points, which allows you to constantly learn and be in the loop with regards to this profession and with regards to what you're doing in your work. So I think that's the beauty about this field, is that you're constantly learning. There's a lot to constantly learn. Sure. Thank you so much for sharing that. My next question for you is, how was the application process for you for the BPsych Equivalent Programme? If you could walk us through the application process.
So when I had finally decided to apply, I think I had 2 weeks before the closure of the application. I'm not sure, because remember, it's not something I initially wanted to do, and not because it's not a great course, or I think because I just wasn't informed.
Yeah.
So I decided late. And even when I was applying, I could say also it was God. Even when I was applying, it was smooth, I just had to fill in the application. I submitted everything, and I knew I'd be called. I think I can call it faith. I knew I'd be called. But the only thing is, when I was called, that's when I started preparing, for the whole selection process, as to what to expect, some of the things I needed to prepare, and all of that. Obviously, I prepared quite a lot, and it wasn't a lot when we got called.
Yeah.
So it wasn't a walk in the park, but it wasn't as challenging also.
Would you say that it was easy preparing? Because I think a lot of people have mentioned, ever since I started this project, a lot of people have mentioned that they wish they had this kind of thing when they were applying. And that's one of the reasons why I also started this project, was because I wish I had somebody like me and you, somebody like our cohort, who can come have conversations like this and just share some light about the program, what it looks like, what the process was like. Do you wish you had a tool like this where you could go and look for information, kind of understand what is this field, how do you apply, what does the application process look like?
I do. But I'm also lucky because when I reached out to other people, like I said, the previous learner that did BPsych, but also he didn't give me everything I think I would have needed at the time. So I do wish there was someone who would, kind of educate me on what registered counselors are, what the BPsych program is, what it entails, what to expect from the selection process right through the whole process of, the first year, which is the theory part, right to practicum, especially preparing for practicum, because I think you just, in your head, you're just like, I got accepted and that's it, From obviously, because you've been studying, you kind of know the drill. You'll have to do your assignments and then end. But you never that prepared for practicum.
Yes.
And I wish I had someone who would prepare me for practicum, because it's no joke.
Sure.
So I do wish I had someone. I just had to go to the net and kind of like research from TikTok, on YouTube, and I didn't even know which correct platform, to look into, and which advices to follow, because some people, like there's different opinions about the program, but I think because yours, it's from someone who actually is walking the journey.
Yes. Sure. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I think that's really going to kind of be an eye-opener for a lot of people, that it's not only just about applying and getting into the program. What does the program actually entail? What does it look like? Are you actually ready, for all that it's going to come with? And I think sometimes people tend to think that the registered counseling program, or rather the BPsych Equivalent Program, might be easier than masters, and then you get in, and yes, you don't expect it to be easy, but like you think, no, surely it can't be as hard as masters, and then you get in and you get the shock of your life, and you realize that actually it's so difficult, and it's challenging, and there's a lot of pressure, a lot of work, a lot of learning in a short space of time, because we only have 6 months to do all of that, whereas in a master's program you'd have a year to do all of that in your internship year. So you can actually find that it's actually, some people might say that it's actually more difficult. I'd be interested to actually maybe in the future interview someone who's done registered counseling and then went on to do maybe like clinical masters and or any of the other masters programs, and just actually find out which training do you feel was the most difficult. I'd be very interested in hearing that. What advice would you give a prospective student?
I think do your research. Understand why you are you want to become a registered counselor and not as, like a backup plan. Because this is not a career that you can treat just as, as a backup plan. At the end of the day, there are people who rely on us, right?
Yes.
It's not just, it's not on paper. These are real life situations. Do your research, talk to people, find people that have been through the program. I think maybe if I hadn't spoken to the colleague that I keep referring to, I wouldn't have known what I was putting myself into.
Yes.
Go to Psychology Pathways, watch the videos, read the manuals, because it's not as hard. I mean, it's not as easy, like you said. The journey is not easy. If I can be honest with you, there were times I cried.
Sure.
Because of the practicum process. Like, I literally cried because of the challenges. I didn't foresee some of the challenges that I went through. And I mean, I don't know anyone that's done, like, obviously I haven't spoken to the guy in a while. I haven't, I don't know anyone that's done the program that probably went through the same challenges that I'm currently going through, so I think your project or this channel is going to help a lot of people, in also hearing from people that are experiencing this firsthand. It's not easy. Practicum is brutal,
Sure.
We have a plan, but sometimes things don't go according to plan. What do I do when that happens? Am I ready for applying for an extension? Do I want to apply for an extension? Things like that. You never prepared for those things. And when they happen, they hit you hard because you're just like, why me? Why are these challenges, it is brutal, but also at the same time, I am grateful to be part of the program. It's teaching me quite a lot of things, most especially patience, because I am going to have to work with people that are going to, test my patience. So I think what I'd advise someone is do your research. Don't just watch videos. Do your research, like proper research. Yeah.
Sure. Thank you so much for sharing that, Thumeka. I hope everybody's listening, and I hope everyone that is listening is has their notebook open and is taking notes and, preparing themselves. Because I know with SACAP, the applications opened at the beginning of this month, or the beginning of July, rather. And I know people are now starting to prepare. They're starting to decide, what do I want to put into my motivation? What do I not want to put in? How can I best prepare myself? How can I be the best candidate, for the program and all of that? So thank you so much for sharing that. What are some misconceptions you think students have about the program?
I think you mentioned something about this, I think in one of your sessions, where there's a misconception that, in terms of rating the BPsych or registered counselors as compared to psychologists, we rank second or even second last. I mean, I think that's one of the reasons I didn't want to do the BPsych, because I didn't want to be, under the what you call psychologists. And I think that's the misconception we have, is that, I mean, it's not an elite job. It's just like registered counselors. What's that? For me, from my observations and from what I've heard from people, and the fact that you will not get a job. That's also something I've been seeing quite a lot. Most people don't see the importance of registered counselors. They don't think they're helpful
until you need to see one.
Exactly. I think we are the most needed people in the world, especially with how things are now, and the challenges people are currently going through. So I think there's also that there's no jobs for registered counselors. It's a useless qualification. I've had that quite a lot. Yeah, I think it's just those two things.
Sure. Thank you for sharing that. I think I've also heard some of those as well, and it's the saddest thing when you hear stuff like that, because then, as a professional or someone who's a future registered counselor, you obviously have better insight now that you're doing the program, and you're realizing how much South Africa itself is in need of registered counselors. And yes, we have a lot of registered counselors out there. Some who may be unemployed, and it's not because there aren't any jobs in the field, but it's just it links back to the general unemployment situation, number one, that we have in the country. It doesn't speak into the fact that it's a need or it's not a need. It's actually a need. There's a huge need for registered counselors within the country, and I think that's the reason why we've seen the government prioritizing registered counselors now. They're really starting to prioritize registered counselors because they love the way registered counselors work. I mean, we do work that's more goal orientated, more solution focus based. The way we structure counseling is there has to be an end to the counseling goal, and if we reach the end and you maybe need more care or whatever, yes, then we can refer. But in most cases, people can do with the short-term counseling that we do, because it's very structured, it's very goal orientated, and by the end of the sessions that you're contracted for, you're able to reach the goal that you came into counseling wanting to reach. And I think that's what a lot of people actually need out there. You don't want something where you're constantly sitting with your counselor forever, especially when there is a possibility that you can reach a goal and be able to kind of go spread your wings, apply whatever coping mechanisms or whatever things you've learned and gotten from counseling, So yeah, I really love how we are being prioritized, and hopefully once we get registered or officially registered as registered counselors, hopefully there'll be more jobs. But the beautiful thing about this field also, I think, is that you can make work for yourself. There's so much that you can do as a registered counselor. You really, there's so much you can do that you don't need to be employed for you to work.
That's very true. And I think that's also something I loved about it. Because, I mean, obviously, you're thinking if you're doing psychology, you want to own your own practice, And I think maybe in the beginning, that's why I didn't even consider becoming a registered counselor, because I was like, when am I going to be my own boss? But when I did research, I also found out that, actually, I mean, I can, write solo. So I think that's also another beauty about it. Yeah.
Sure. My last question for you, Thumeka, is if you could change one thing about your experience, and this is from the application process up until now, if you could change anything about your experience, what would it be?
What would I change? Because from the application process, I was very honest about why I wanted to get into the program, my experiences that led me into, being interested in doing the program. I think if I were to change anything, it would be practicum. Practicum growed me. Practicum growed me. I think it would be, I mean, obviously you can't prepare for practicum. You don't know the challenges. I don't know if I could share my experience. I think when I ran across a challenge, obviously I reported the challenge, but I don't think. Well, I think maybe if I had done something about it like earlier, it would have been fixed. Because now the thing is, there's also other things. You're also busy with other things, and you sometimes don't pay attention, to other things. But another thing is they also affect your practicum experience. Yes. So I think what I could change would be, I don't know, being more active or not taking long to, to deal with some of the challenges that I personally experienced. Yeah. But in terms of from application to me starting my BPsych program until now, I honestly didn't come across any challenges, particularly with the program itself. It was just personal challenges, like I said, of adjusting and all of that, because I had been a student like right from undergrad to the BPsych program. So like I had prepared myself. The only challenging part was or is practical.
Sure. I'm glad that you shared that. I think sometimes when you're really in the thick of things, you don't always get time to reflect and realize how challenging and difficult things have been. And I think we've all experienced practicum in different ways. We all have different experiences of it. And it's not to say that it's others have it harder than others or anything. It's just that we all obviously placed at different places. We're all dealing with different clients. And the reality is we're all different people as well. And taking time to reflect is very important, but it can be very difficult, in practicum. And I think the one thing that maybe has helped me up until this point is whatever tools I give to my clients, I try to practice myself, especially if I'm maybe encounter a situation where I'm dealing with the same thing, because it's very easy to help your clients come up with really good coping mechanisms, really good tools on how to deal with life and life situations. But when it comes to yourself, it's like, what do I do? And I guess the saying that says a doctor can't heal themselves is true. Even us as student registered counselors, we do need counseling sometimes, and I know a lot of us have even spoken about how we are all going to counseling or therapy after this practicum because of how difficult it is. And it's not to say that we've been broken beyond being repaired, but we can really feel that we've been broken so that we can be rebuilt the correct way, or in a way that's going to allow us to be fully equipped as registered counselors. So I can't wait to see you at the end of the road. And I just want to tell you that you're doing amazing. I never want you to ever doubt that you're not doing amazing. And like we've constantly been told by our coordinators that this is the best time to learn, and whatever, we feel we could have done better, we then apply as we go, and the beauty about this is that we're humans. Humans sometimes make mistakes, humans sometimes don't do the best that could have been done in that situation. Doesn't mean you didn't do the best, your best in that situation, but there's always something that you can do better. There's always room for improvement, and that's the beautiful thing about this journey, is that every time you practice, you get to learn new things. Every time you go for supervision, you get that constructive criticism where you get to improve your skills and learn and become better. And I really want to say you're doing amazing. I don't want you to ever doubt that. You're in the right place, you're in the right field. I can't wait to see you become a great and amazing practitioner one day.
Thank you, Sita.
Thank you so much. Also, thank you so much for coming to have this conversation with me. Thank you so much for supporting my project, and thank you so much for supporting Psychology Pathways with Sweetling. I'm really hoping that everybody who was tuned in here today really got to learn a lot from your story, your journey. I think this platform goes more beyond, or it goes beyond just what do you do to get into the program? How do you prepare for the program? How do you get accepted? It's because it's not a linear path, and it's not a linear thing. We don't know what the panelists are looking for. You never know what the panelists are looking for. But the one thing that we do know is if you have a better chance of being accepted, if you can be the best version of yourself and be true to yourself.
True. Thank you so much, Sita. Thank you for this opportunity. Yeah, I honestly never thought I didn't think I would do this. But I mean, also to just contribute, positively to some people learning, Thank you
Yes.
so much. Thank you for having me. And I hope to see you at the end of, yeah.
All right. Thank you so much, Thumeka. Thank you, everybody, for joining us in this conversation today. I hope you guys really enjoyed the conversation. Please do let us know in the comment section below what you have learned from our conversation today. If you have any questions for either me or Thumeka, please do leave them in the comment section below, and I will make sure that we do get to them. Hopefully, this is not the last time we see Thumeka on this channel.
Yeah.
So yes, I hope you guys really enjoyed this conversation. Don't forget to hit that like button, comment in the comment section below, subscribe, okay? Please don't forget to subscribe and join our growing community, and don't forget to hit that notification bell so that you are notified every time we drop a video. Hope you guys stay well and take care of yourselves. Goodbye.